Porsche done to the GT3? This thing is insane. You read the spec sheet and there's nothing that betrays what this car feels like on the road versus a GT3. This, 10, 15 horsepower more, so what? Yeah, you've done a load of aero things, but why does it feel like a damn cup car? And that's what I want to try and understand today. Yes, we're going to drive it in a minute, but first, let's stop the car and let's try to understand what have Porsche actually done under the skin. Why have these aero things changed the car so much? What's going on with the exhaust? How is it different to the already amazing GT3? Let's find out together first, then we're going to head back here and drive this car properly. So guys, in 52 years of RS, Porsche have only awarded those special letters to cars that were inextricably linked to motorsport variants of the 911. It all started in 1972 with the Carrera 2.7 RS, one of the strongest, most race-focused sports cars of its time. And that car started then a legacy, particularly in the GT3 RS generation of cars, that has led now today to perhaps the RS that is the most linked to motorsport out of all of them, and that is the brand new 992 GT3 RS. And our press car today, as you can see, pays a less than subtle homage to that original 2.7 car. And this one, like I said, is the most linked to modern day motorsport 911 cars, more so than you'd ever believe. And so much so that I'm going to show you exactly how much in person today. Of course, today I will dissect this car because even as a Porsche owner myself, seeing it, it looks incredible. But what have they actually done, and how much better is it than a standard GT3? In reality, is it worth that extra money, considering just how good the standard 992 GT3 is? So we're going to dissect it, we're going to go over all of the aero that they've done, and there's a ton of it. We'll talk about the previous gen as well, and really drill down into the reasons why this car is the pinnacle of Porsche RS at the moment. So let's dive in, guys, and check out the GT3 RS. The perfect driving and lifestyle shoe doesn't exist, right? Except it does. Guys, our sponsor today is a returning one from back in the early days of RBR, and one of my favorites, and that is Piloti driving shoes. And you would have seen me wear their shoes in the majority of RBR videos, but the sponsorship was just a couple of videos. But I've worn these for years because they are incredible for just comfort in terms of when I'm traveling, press trips, day-to-day usage, but most importantly, for the purposes of driving. They are incredible for heel and toe feel and general pedal feel for the driver. I liken it to almost upgrading from a standard steering wheel to a performance steering wheel, but for your feet. Now, Piloti were kind enough to send some of their latest ones over to me. This is my personal favorite. It's called the Shift. I'm wearing like the older version of this now. It's got the tire pattern on the sole, wonderfully mimicking your car. We've got Italian suede here again, mimicking the type of materials you would find in performance cars. The shape is really smart as well, and it really mirrors something like this, like a 911. It's a smart shoe. A close second to that is the Icona, and this is a new one. It's their more fitted racing shoe that has a special tread again at the bottom. It's made of, again, Italian leather, Nappa. It's built in Portugal, and the type of heel and toe feel that you get off this shoe, again, it's just incredible. And then the specs of these shoes as well, just like cars, you've got like greens, you've got tans, you've got pure black, and it's great because you can choose the one that perfectly fits your performance car. So really, proof in the pudding for me is just how much I've used them over the years, and now they're back sponsoring the channel, and for you guys, I've got a great discount. RBR15 will get you 15% off site-wide, and the great thing is now they're shipping worldwide, including to the UK. So this is the best time to get one. The new designs are awesome, guys. Use that code RBR15 and enjoy the Piloti shoes while you're driving, as I do. Let's get back to the car. So guys, that last generation of GT3 RS was one of the most amazing cars I've ever driven, even in the shadow of the GT2 RS. And the reason for that was the incredible engine and the advancements that it made over 997 in terms of aerodynamics, with the larger wing, the more active aero, the NACA ducts, the suspension tweaks, greater use of carbon fiber, and maintaining a wonderful natural engine at 510 brake horsepower, it was just something to marvel over. And you really did end up questioning yourself, is the 2RS really better? And I know a lot of reviewers and a lot of people who simply preferred the 3RS because it had that usable amount of power, whereas the GT2 was just insane. I personally prefer the GT2 RS, but I totally get why people lean towards the old 3RS. So an incredible car. Following on from this though, when 992 GT3 came along, again, just an amazing car, even building upon that old RS. We still have the natural engine in this generation, which is incredible in this day and age, producing 510 PS here in our GT3, 10 more than the previous car. The real big news, however, was the suspension system. Gone was the McPherson strut stuff, and we finally got double wishbones, which totally changed the character of the front end. Better steering, better tyre contact, so much better for camber, really changed how this car felt versus previous gen GT3 and standard 911 as well. Then of course, enhancements in the aerodynamics thanks to the new swan neck mounted rear wing. You still have the option of either manual or PDK, and then a stainless steel exhaust system that, despite the addition of particulate filters, still sounds amazing going all the way to 9,000 revs. And despite everything that's added, despite the fact that this car has grown in size, it maintained the weight of the predecessor, again, which is so brilliant. And then 992 generation brought in the Touring as, instead of it being overpriced and highly sought after special edition, just a normal part of the series, which I think actually elevated the standard 992 GT3 series higher, because now you have a variant that's a bit more, well, better at touring, and it takes advantage of all the exclusive manufacturer stuff to such a high degree. It just makes this series feel more special. But then how does one build upon already such a strong lineage of both GT3 and RS cars in the modern world when regs are so restricting in terms of emissions and cars are just nth and tenths better than their predecessors? Well, of course, Porsche have done it, and the way they've done it, I think, is stealing as much learning as possible from their motorsport division and bringing it, somehow getting it approved for the road. So let's discuss how they've done it. It all begins, first of all, with a different body. This is turbo body, so slightly wider on the front, which is very obvious when you look at the arches, slightly wider on the rear as well, about 49mm. Forget the figures. When you look at it, very obviously wider than even GT3, and I absolutely love the body of this. Then the entire story begins and almost ends with aerodynamics. This is Porsche going absolutely mental and basically dedicating an entire product just to aerodynamics. And it all starts here at the bonnet. Normally, in every other series 911, you would have 3 radiators on the front. They've got rid of those in this, and we have a single large radiator leaning backward. This was inspired by the GT3R and the RSR motorsport cars. Like I said, all of this learning coming in from motorsport. This whole configuration with this huge fan optimizes your airflow management in a great way and saves space. But the downside is pushing hot air towards the engine. Now, a natural engine doesn't want hot air. It wants cold, dense air so it can keep the horsepower level where it should be. So to counteract this, Porsche have put specially placed fins in areas in order to direct the hot air away from the engine and leave only the cold air going there. So you've got the best of both worlds. But getting rid of those other rads meant freeing up space for active aerodynamics. So we've got PAA, Porsche Active Aero in here, where we've got a number of flaps which can move at around about 80 degrees or more within 0.3 of a second, and it provides more downforce on demand for the driver. Also new are these aerodynamically shaped teardrop shaped links in our front wishbones, which not only help add 40 kg of downforce, but also help the anti-dive element of the car. Not only do you have the vents over the wheel arch, but you also have something that I think is pure car porn. It's the six-pack ab, it's the underboob, it's the upskirt of the car world, and those are the exposed rear tyres, again helping push out even more air. Not only do you have them on the front and they look gorgeous, but you also have them on the rear and they're just incredible. Honestly,
I am soaking wet right now.
Then of course, the elephant in the room. The biggest production Porsche wing ever made. Just look how huge this thing is. It is taller than the roof for the first ever time. It's wider than the glass. It looks like something that should not have passed regs. I don't know how Porsche managed to do it, but they did do it. And compared to the previous gen GT3 RS, it is an entire 40% larger just look how small the wing looks when they're both put side to side on the previous gen. The new one is massive. This wing has a fixed lower portion and a hydraulically operated top portion. Why does it have a hydraulic top portion? This is to activate DRS on demand. If you're wondering what DRS is and you don't watch F1, it's the drag reduction system, and it can be activated on demand by the driver. It is the coolest thing. Now the driver can manually control this themselves, and a ton of other things on the really complicated looking steering wheel that we'll get into in a sec, but this will also activate by itself in speeds higher than 62 miles per hour, or when you've got more than 95% throttle input as well. Finally, we've got a ton of aero fins underneath the car. These plus all the active aero stuff gives this car the perfect aerodynamic balance of 30% on the front and 70% on the rear. And this, like I said, a huge part of the story of this car that makes it such a great track car. Except for this vent here, which is not a vent, as labeled. Nice. The suspension, as we said with GT3, gone are the McPherson struts. Now we've got the double wishbone, which will change the game versus previous generations, but more is changed. We've got 50% stiffer spring rate versus GT3, and instead of rubber bushings, we've got now metal ball joints derived from Motorsport as well. Then the engine. Of course, the engine very closely linked to our standard GT3, but actually one-to-one to our Cup car as well, something that we will explore in a minute. There is a few differences to standard GT3. We've got an updated cam profile. The power is higher at 525 brake. Interestingly, the top speed is lower than the GT3, but still enough usable performance, which is interesting. GT3 RS has always been about on-road usable performance. The gearbox is still your trusty PDK, no manual option of course, and this is slightly modified with a shorter final drive ratio for better acceleration, and we'll try the acceleration. You're going to be surprised in a weird way actually. And it's of course got those wonderful magnetic shifter paddles, again derived directly from Motorsport. Then of course lightweightness, which is a huge story with RS. This comes in at 1450 kg, which is 15 kg lighter than the standard GT3, which is incredible when you think just how much more stuff we have in this, right? And the way they've done this, more use of carbon fiber, of course, carbon fiber bonnet, carbon fiber wings, roof, big wing at the back for the first time ever. The doors, you can get the magnesium wheels to reduce weight even further. We haven't got those here. We've got the standard ones. That is a hugely, hugely impressive weight figure. Then we come to the design. Again, very, very different, but similar to GT3, just like in the previous generation. But all of this is done for a purpose, apart from that vent. And it looks incredible. Like, it looks so much like the Cup car. Like, it's unbelievable. This car doesn't look like it should have been able to homologate for the road, but it has. And it's so similar to that Cup car, in fact. What I want to do is look at one and speak to someone who knows a lot more about it than I do. So guys, we are here in Knock Hill for the Carrera Cup, and I'm joined by James Wallace. James, how you doing?
Nice to meet you. You okay?
Good to meet you, man.
Good.
You've just started this year in the juniors?
Yeah,
right?
correct. Yes.
So, and this is your car, right?
Yeah, this is my car. Yeah.
So, you're the best man to explain how similar your Carrera Cup cars are to the GT3 RS.
Yeah.
Which is,
of course.
if I'm right, it's your dream car as well, right?
It's my dream car, definitely. 100%.
So, you haven't driven it yet?
Never driven it. Definitely one on my bucket list, I would say. Anyway, yeah.
This lad, he's only 18 years old, right? And it's a shame that an old man like me, who can't drive for shit, is able to drive that car in this video, but this young man who's a much better driver can't. But I'm sure Porsche Press will sort that out for you soon. So there's a lot of similarities, right, between this and the road car.
Yes. So obviously when you kind of first look at it, I would say it looks pretty similar to the 992 GT3 RS. And to be fair, the cars are still 80% road cars, so it's actually fairly similar. The main differences for us is we have no ABS or traction control, so kind of the safety features for the road are taken away for us. So it makes the racing hard and competitive.
But just like on a completely layman basis, you just look at it and things like the grille are the same, you know, the openings are in the same area, your lower area, the lights, as you said.
Yeah, it's still the standard 4 LED Porsche one.
Could you open this up for us?
Yeah, of course. And there's not actually too much to see, but in terms of what we have here, so down here we have an air jack, so what we can do, we can plug in compressed air into the side of the car and it actually rises the car up so we can take off wheels a lot quicker.
Yeah, got it. But the funny thing is, in our 3RS, you have no space when you open the front.
But we do.
Because you've got the giant fan in here, so like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
useless, but you've actually got more space in here than you would in the road car, which is quite funny.
Yeah, no, you definitely fit my suitcase.
Yeah.
So, no, and then we have our fuel tank up here. It's a race specification.
Yeah, which looks so amazing.
But there's nothing actually there.
Oh,
so
right, okay.
It still shows how similar it is to the
Again, similar
992
to the road
GT3.
car,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So we obviously still have the engine in the rear of the
Yep.
car, the 4-litre flat six.
So the engine is basically 1-to-1,
Yeah, identical.
basically,
Yeah,
right?
pretty
Identical.
much.
And like you mentioned earlier, the only real difference, I guess, in terms of the revs was about 500 to 600 revs, where this is 8.4.
8.4 we run to RPM, so
And then our road car is about 9,000. So.
yeah, so it's a bit higher, but
But how cool is that for like a road customer that your car that you're doing all this amazing stuff on outside is like using the same engine as, you know, a road GT3?
yeah, I mean it's amazing how similar it is, but also it kind of allows people who race these cars to keep the costs a bit lower,
Yeah,
where there's nothing crazy going on in the engine, where the expensive
because otherwise
kind
the
of
main expense is your engine and
and
your
the development
gearbox,
which goes
right?
into it, so they obviously have to get their money back. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean the rear wing we still have that kind of swan neck shape.
Exactly, yeah.
We just have 14 adjustments.
Yeah.
Definitely don't have that in the road car, although you do have the DRS in the road
Yeah,
car, don't
which
you?
is really cool, isn't
Which
it?
would be cool in these cars. It'd actually probably make the racing quite competitive, I think, or even more competitive anyway.
But it's cool that, I mean, the whole swan neck thing originally came into the road car from, you know, this series, like from GT3 and from
Yeah,
this
yeah.
series of cars anyway, right?
Yeah, correct.
And for like someone who hasn't watched Carrera Cup, what's the draw-in for you? If there was one thing that you would say, like, this is why you should be.
So, Carrera Cup's probably the fastest one-make series there is. All the cars are the exact same. They all come out the Manthai garage, the exact same. So, the
So
racing
versus
is,
someone else you're driving, like, it's
yeah.
near identical
It's-
nut and bolt, right?
I mean, yeah, identical. Every car is the exact same, and I mean, you can see that on the times. I mean, today, like the top 10 was split by, or in qualifying yesterday, the top 10 was split by a tenth and a half. So,
Yeah.
it just shows how tight it is.
So that just means it's down to like the driver and the driver's
Yeah,
skill. So it's almost
Yeah.
pure as racing can get, right?
Yeah, I mean, it really can't get any more raw, and with no traction control and ABS, it makes it super technical for drivers as well. So,
Well, listen, thank you so much for your time.
No worries,
I
yeah.
really wish you the best. It's
Yeah,
been a pleasure.
appreciate it, yeah,
You're a
thank
young
you,
man.
yeah.
I hope you have a great career ahead of you.
yeah, no worries. Yeah.
And guys, that really explains, I think, really well by James, how similar these amazing Cup cars are to that amazing car that is the 3 RS that we are about to drive. Let's head back to the 3 RS. Okay guys, the interior. Let's have a look at this. First thing that I really like about 3 RS is the fact that it's got your standard door handles here, which are just the normal ones, right? As opposed to what we have on GT3, which are the 992 style ones that eat your fingers, and really we don't like that much. But yes, back to GT3, and it's the changes that you expect out of this. So we have the lightweight bucket seats, which are of course optional. You can actually go for the comfort ones in the configurator, interestingly. These are great, they're comfortable, they're different to the ones in 991. Even though they look the same, they're actually, I think they're a bit more comfortable, I think. You've of course got the carbon roll cage behind here, which is meticulously crafted. It just looks incredible. Again, that is optional. And from what I've heard, if you actually want to fit helmets in the rear of this thing, don't get the carbon roll cage, oddly enough, because you seldom be able to fit them through there. And of course, you don't have any storage left here anymore either. So that rear area, more important than it's ever been if you're serious about tracking with another person. The other big change is of course the steering wheel. I'll get onto that in a second. Your door card is different as well. So you've got the pulley handles, as was made normal by RS cars. You've got this lovely carbon fiber handle for the door itself. And I'm glad you still have a little storage area here. Happily, your driver zone and your infotainment system and all the rest of the front dashboard, basically the same as GT3, but they do look markedly different next to each other. This is really very, very RS in reality, even with the door cards. And if we go and look at that car now, sorry, I need any excuse to show off my touring. This is what I was saying about what the touring adds to the 992 range. It just looks a completely different car, really bridging the gap between standard 911 and GT3. You can see the vast difference in the door card, the door handles, just the trim and the elements and the overall look. This is like a melding of standard 992 and the GT product. Yes, still very GT3, but that looks as purposeful inside as it does outside. Now, closing up and jumping in. Of course, we're going to have a proper look at this while we're driving, but just so you can see the differences here, particularly the lovely magnetic paddles, which actually I've also put into the touring because I love them so much. These are great, Motorsport derived. and then this total control for tracks. And it really is for track, which is why it's only available in track mode. Let's turn this baby on. You can touch this and it will say nope, function only available in track. So we head into track mode. Then you just tap one by one you can adapt these elements, whether that's PASM, whether that's Porsche torque vectoring, the ESC, and of course we have our drive mode. So of course we will see what that's like on the road. The other cool thing I like is that the RS cars have a different keyring with a dark chrome and then the RS button. That's quite a nice touch to finish things off. Now, let's head out and let's drive this thing and see what it's like versus, particularly for me, the standard GT3. So guys, as a GT3 driver, even driving in normal mode in this car, immediately it feels completely different to my car. It's the suspension, it's the lack of sound insulation, it is the steering feel, which is so much heavier. It's the general urgency of the car to not want to be on roads that constrain it, which are most roads. In reality, this car wants to, no, it needs to be taken to a track, and it tells you that. It tells you that from the minute that you set foot in the car, that what are you doing here? Why aren't we at Silverstone? And I respect that because this is a tool for a purpose. So like I said at the start, first 100 yards as a GT3 driver, you're just puzzled and thinking, what have they done here? What have they done to create this car? So we're going to break it down. Let's do it step by step. First, we're going to look at the speed itself. And while I would love to do a launch control and a 0 to 150 on a normal road, that is not possible in the UK. But we can do it in some places. And to do that, let's go to a place dear to all of our hearts. What was it they used to say? Pass through Gambon and across the line. I've always wanted to say that. Oh, giddy, giddy, giddy. Okay, directly in front of us right there is Hammerhead. We got the straight over there. What I'm thinking is it'd be nice to see what this can do in terms of a launch first. Right, let's see what this does. Oh, nice. 3 seconds dead to 60. Let's see what we get to 130. Oh, 8.4 to 130. That's insane, and easily reached 150 miles per hour. I won't take it past that because top speed, as we know, not that relevant with 3 RS. What is relevant is getting to grips with how quick this thing is around corners. Good God! So guys, that's a launch control time of 3 seconds dead, which is pretty impressive, you would think. But now let's do that same thing on normal roads with my GT3 Touring. So there you go, the Touring achieving the exact same time as the 3 RS, which should tell you one thing. Launch speed and speed in general, not that important when it comes to this car, because look how much better the ring time is. This is not about how fast you can launch. Those of you who saw my GT Black Series review know with that car of mine, I found the exact same thing on the launch control, getting abysmal figures of like 4 seconds, and that is the fastest production car on the Nürburgring in this class. And while I was at Dunsfold, I drove this car back to back with my 911 GTS at the time, and speed was not something that stood out for me, even versus the GTS. It was everything else. When I drive this fast, it feels faster. A lot of that is because of the epic exhaust note that this exhaust system, though similar, its internals are completely different, so you just get a different sound. The 9,000 RPM engine just sounds incredible, and then you've got less noise insulation, and it all just adds to the experience. So it feels faster, and everything else that it does makes it feel faster as well. But straight line speed, you know, if you're going on convoys with other things like McLarens and Ferraris, eventually this thing's going to fall back. It's just a fact. But as soon as you approach a corner, this will decimate everything in its way. Just the suspension, the aerodynamics, the downforce, the way that the front end is just completely in your control. Like you feel like a complete hero, even though you're still intimidated by this beast. You bring it into sport mode, and that gap between this and GT3 just seems to get larger and larger. And you get near a corner, and the way this thing dips and dives and exits out of one is simply superhuman. So one thing is the steering feel. Like, it turns so keenly, you have to readjust your brain to get used to it. I really found that on track as well. Similarly, I found myself just braking way too early because the tolerances were much greater in the 3 RS. So it's a lot of re-engineering your brain to understand, really, this is a legally approved cup car that you can use on the road. And really it needs to be treated as such. Then of course, one of the best things for an F1 fan, seeing DRS ready and hitting the DRS button just puts a massive smile on your face. It's like the car is literally part of the tarmac. That's how good the tyre contact is, particularly on the front and then particularly on the rear when you're coming out of a corner. And really, I think that's one of the things that surprises you the most, is the grip on offer, despite this being a powerful rear-wheel drive car. It's just how much of that power you can put down. Whatever you say about the launch control, for a rear-wheel driven car, fantastic. And just really how much speed you can carry through. If you trust it, which I haven't got to the levels of doing, it can carry so much speed through a corner. Let's talk about the PDK. The revisions immediately noticeable. You can either use this here, which I love using, or you've got the lovely magnetic paddles here. And the difference to standard GT3 is immediately noticeable on this. You're shifting gears more often, the acceleration is that much more vicious, and you've got that typical RS lightning fast gear shift that's only made better by these magnetic shifters that you get in the Weissach package. I mean, truly, if you're not sure about Weissach, whether to get it, the shift paddles by themselves worth the price of entry. But I feel this is the type of car where if you can, you really should get Weissach package unless you're really set on using it daily. Why not? It's only going to amplify the experience. It's actually really frustrating driving this car on just normal roads because you just know, forget 10/10 or 5/10, you're not even 3/10 using this car to its potential. You just can't. And that's a real shame. And I wouldn't say that about things like 4RS, things like the GT3, where you can access a lot of that power, even though the power is similar. Remember, it's only 525 PS versus the GT3's 510, but you seem to enjoy a lot more of that. This, it wants to give you more in other areas, but it can't give you that on a normal road. You know, and there's a certain tragedy to that on a normal road, it becomes more about the way it looks rather than what it can do. Now look, that's not necessarily a bad thing. You can track this car. There's so many great tracks all over the world. The other great thing here is, of course, when you go into track mode, the configurability that we have. As soon as you go in, it tells you that you have race track pressures applied to your tires. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Then you've got these 4 modules here. For example, the country roads that we're on here, they're quite bumpy. So we can go into PASM, and per wheel, I can adjust them to be a little bit softer, so I'm not jarred as much, and that's going to make driving on these type of roads much more comfortable. The default setting, as soon as you go into the configurable modes, is 0, and Porsche says that that is the best for a standard dry track. It is after that then that you can start to adjust compression, you can start to adjust rebound, you have full control over Porsche's torque vectoring. This is all to do with oversteer and understeer, and you can adjust that with the coast and the power features here. What's easier to understand is your ESC and your traction control, which again, ESC has got a full control of 8 stages available here, and your traction control has 3 different stages: on, dynamic, and completely off. So yes, you can use this, for example, if you've gone to the Bilsterberg after finishing at Hockenheimring and you need to change the settings based on the undulations. Instead of that, what if you wanted to change it for normal road use? You can do that. Let me show you how. So I'll say now, in your standard normal mode, it's 100% more on edge than a normal GT3, particularly the touring. Like, it feels like the old 3RS used to. But strangely, if we shift this into track mode, which gives us total configurability, then we hit the PASM button here. At the moment, everything feels crazy. It feels track on edge, like the highest setting. But if I make the compression and the rebound -4 on each wheel, now allegedly, it is softer than a standard GT3. Let's see if it feels that way. The other thing you can do is go to drive mode, choose track, and change the PDK to sport so it's not so on edge with your throttle responses, and it calms down a little bit. Otherwise, it's undrivable for daily, right? Now, in terms of the dampers, let's have a look. It's definitely much more calm. I'd say maybe as much as the standard GT3. I think my touring, the steering, the dampers, everything, it just feels a better road car. There's less road noise. Like, this will never feel as comfortable. But the fact that you can do all of this and get near to that comfort, whereas the previous 3RS and 2RS were nowhere near it, is a great thing. And it's great that you can do that with the configurability of this new system here. It's not just being used on track. So that's a really interesting aspect of this, that you can have that daily usability, yet strangely you can't because it's hindered in terms of the frunk and the other bits and pieces. It's all a bit weird. I think this is an out-and-out track car. I think despite all of that, it is a one-dimensional device and it's really meant to be. It's not even here for the thrill seekers or for those who love speed like the GT3 RS might intimidate you. It feels like a car that's built to almost train you to be a better track driver, almost to move you up to Carrera Cup or something and do some customer racing. I think it's the perfect car for that. It's so capable that it has the intimidation of being able to be a cup car, but then you can gradually wind yourself into that thanks to how configurable it is. And I really can't think of another car that has that breadth of ability to bring you from 0 to hero over time if you really want to do it. And I think that's what stands out for me, which to me is a bit different to the previous 3RS, which was a bit more of a thrill-seeking machine. And don't get me wrong, I don't think this is a bad thing. I don't think it's a negative. I think the more variety you have in the 911 range, the better. For speed, you've got the Turbo S, which is insanely fast. For a much more daily use track car, the GT3 and the Touring are absolutely unmatched. They're brilliant. But for an out-and-out, be as good as a cup car, track car, you know, to learn on, and it's still so exciting thanks to the way that all these components come together. This to me is a one-dimensional machine built for track, built to teach you how to be a better driver. When I've had access to both 3RS and GT3, I would choose GT3. I have been choosing GT3 for the normal tasks, the errands, just having normal fun. When I wanted to push a car and test myself, I chose this. And that's fine. I think that's what 3RS is all about. I can't wait to see what 2RS does. It's many years away, as we said, but still exciting to think about. How far can Porsche push the RS series before regulation starts to suffocate it? How far can we take this series before electric cars destroys the dream? I don't want to think about it, but I do want to see what they can do between now and then. And if this car is of any indication, we are in really safe hands. So guys, I really hope you've enjoyed this drive of the 3RS on normal roads. If you have, as always, please do like and subscribe to RBR, and I'll see you guys next time.